With me here is attorney Matthew Maddox. Prevention and health education are trial attorney Matthew Maddox's passions. For more than 12 years, in the face of a growing number of families seeking his legal representation in cases involving alcohol and drugs, he began looking for ways to intervene in local communities. Since then, he has lent his voice and experience to schools, boards of education, and other organizations in order to inform families and adolescents about the risks of alcohol and drug use. Now, recently, Matthew has created a presentation called Marijuana, the Law and Social Policy, with the intention of educating Connecticut residents about the marijuana debate that is coming to this state. Now, his next presentation is coming up this Thursday, September 15th at 7 p.m. in the Darien Library Community Room. And Matthew, we welcome you here this morning. How you doing? Pull that microphone right in. Don't be afraid of it.
You bet. Thank you, Tony.
Talk right into it.
Here.
All right. So glad you're here. Now, why is this topic so important to you?
Well, you know, it comes out of my practice, Tony. Probably beginning about 14, 15 years ago, we began seeing much larger numbers of adolescents and their families coming to us for assistance in court and criminal matters and colored by drug and alcohol issues. So I wanted to get involved in prevention. I wanted to get involved in some level in the communities around here trying to intervene. And this may sound counterintuitive because you'd think I'd want more clients, but to try to help people to avoid the problems that brought them to my practice to begin with.
All right. Now, you've got this presentation that's coming up on Thursday, and tell us about the presentation. Can you divulge a little bit about it?
Sure. There's so much to cover on this issue, and what I think is going to be a marijuana legalization debate coming to Connecticut. You know, Massachusetts has it up for vote very soon. Maine is going to be voting on it very soon. And I think that our budget issue in Connecticut, budget issues being what they are, I think the temptation of the tax revenue is going to be really too high for our legislators to say, no, we're not going to legalize recreational marijuana. But there are a lot of different subtopics. You know, there are topics that have to do with, adolescence and the teenage brain and brain development and THC, which is the narcotic ingredient in marijuana. How does it affect brain development? Tax revenue versus social costs. What are the costs going to be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, 15 years from now? What is the culture we're going to be creating? And really the presentation is really about getting people the information and data they need to be informed, and then as consumers and families making their decisions accordingly.
All right. We're talking with Matthew Maddox, and he's an attorney. He's with the Maddox Law Firm, and this is all sponsored, by the way, by the Maddox Law Firm in New Canaan. Now, currently, what are the laws for possession in Connecticut?
Well, possession, back 4 years ago in July, possession of a half an ounce or less of marijuana became a non-criminal offense in Connecticut. So in other words, if you run a red light, it's an infraction. If you possess half an ounce of marijuana or less in Connecticut, it's also an infraction now. You can send in a ticket if you want to, guilty, and it's not a criminal event. Above a half an ounce, then you're into the beginning of a misdemeanor. And regardless of your age, adolescent or otherwise, you may be applying for the Drug Education Community Service Labor Program. And then up from there, you start getting into felony territory depending upon what you are with, what you have. How is the marijuana packaged? Do you have cash on you? Are you under possession with intent to sell range? Are you selling? And then you're into felony territory and things get a lot more intense. Okay. And what's the biggest myth right now about marijuana, in your opinion? I think the biggest myth about marijuana is that it simply isn't addictive, and the studies, the information we have now, Tony, is that in the general population overall, all age groups, we're going to have about a 9% addiction rate for somebody who starts smoking marijuana today. For adolescents, it's somewhere around between 15 and 17%. The addiction rate goes up. And if you're using daily, you're going to be addicted probably at a rate in the population in the low to mid 20%. So 1 out of 5 people who use marijuana daily are going to be addicted to marijuana. And then we get into all the consequences that you and I and everybody understands about addiction and what that leads to. So the myth is that marijuana isn't addictive, that it's a very benign kind of plant. You can smoke it, you can put it in an edible, in a gummy bear, and it's not going to bother you. And I think that's the most prevalent myth right now.
And, forgive my ignorance because I've never smoked marijuana. My right hand to God on that one.
You're completely forgiven, and God bless you.
But isn't it going to have the same effect if you're high on marijuana? Is it the same effect as getting behind the wheel after too many cocktails?
Well, that's another really complicated area. We don't have a reliable test like we do for alcohol for DWI. It took about 30 years, Tony, to develop a reliable test for DWI, the chemical ratios. Mm-hmm. We don't have such a test for marijuana, which is absorbed, it's fat soluble rather than absorbed into the bloodstream the way alcohol is. So is it the same? The behaviors are different. The impact on motor skills and judgment are different with marijuana. Mm-hmm. And frankly, where we are medically and neurologically and what we know toxicologically about marijuana and how it impacts the brain and functioning, we're still figuring it out.
Yeah.
So the DWI for marijuana is qualitatively different than the DWI for alcohol.
Okay, so it's a complicated subject.
No question about it.
It really is. Wow. Now, for those who don't smoke marijuana, why should they care whether it's legal or not? How does it affect them?
I think whether you smoke marijuana or not, let's say that let's say you're Tony Reno and you've never smoked marijuana in your life, you're never going to smoke marijuana. We are really on a threshold, I think, in this country of entering we're entering the marijuana age in this country. And I think we have to be cognizant of and be aware of and try to anticipate really the next generation. Mm-hmm. That's why you've got to think about it. Where is this going in terms really over the next decade to 2 decades? Not the next 1, 2, or 3 years, which generally is how our legislators tend to forecast. We've got to look at really the next generation, whether you're a smoker or a non-smoker. How is this going to impact us culturally, in social costs, medically? And, what do we do about crime and how do we handle people who do smoke marijuana? These all have to be balanced. And I think it's a very long-term view that even non-smokers really need to pay attention to.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that I think about is, like with my kids, they turned 21. Now it was legal. If they wanted to have a beer, if they wanted to have a drink, they could go out and they could do that. Mm-hmm. Because it's legal. Right. My oldest son, who's he's 30 years old, close to 30 years old now. His big line was when we talked to him about it. You're 21 now. He was like, "Well, it's my decision. My decision." The thing about marijuana, if it's illegal, somebody like him who might be on the fence about it, right? He's going to say, "Well, it's illegal," even though I'm a little curious. Nah, I'll put that. Now, if it becomes legal, hey, why don't I give it a shot? And the thing that I always thought about: how do you know how you're going to react? How do you know when you take a puff of that you're not allergic or you're going to go into a convulsion or whatever? I don't know. These are things I think about.
Well, you've obviously done some reading, I think, because this idea of, are you going to have some type of a neurological event? Is it going to be a seizure? Is it going to be a convulsion? Well, that varies chemically from brain to brain. And again, Tony, we're just beginning to learn about the human brain now. Mm. We're just beginning to learn about genetics and how chemicals such as THC may impact us even on the genetic level. Right. Look, I'm not a great fan of government dictating to people.
Right.
You can't do this, you can't do that. But what I am a fan of is citizens getting the information they need so that they can make an informed decision.
All right, Matthew, unfortunately, we're running out of time, but I do want to remind people that your next presentation coming up Thursday, September 15th at 7 p.m. in the Darien Library Community Room. Anything you want to add to that?
It's going to be a lot of fun. We're all going to learn a lot. It's a very, very interactive format that I like to follow. Questions start from the beginning to the end. And we like a lot of dialogue. It's not a talking head situation. It's going to be a lot of fun. Okay. And if people want more information on this subject, if they want more information on your law firm, is there a website? Well, the MaddoxLawFirm.com. Certainly, you can find us on Facebook and on Twitter, more information about the presentation and also links to information on this particular topic. All right. Sounds good. I thank you for taking a few minutes. This interview is sponsored by the Maddox Law Firm in New Canaan. And Matthew, if I understand correctly, you're going to be back a couple more times. I will be. I'm looking forward to it. Sounds good. All right. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you very much, Tony.